You're listening to the To Write Love on Our Arms podcast, a show about mental health and the things that make us human. What first was, the first barometric sign of the burnout was just your level of productivity, or were there, some other manifestations of what burnout would be, how it would manifest?
Yeah. I think parenting probably brought that on for me. Literal lack of sleep, affects your life in so many different ways. And that was really hard for me to grasp, that this one area that's very connected to my health and to other pieces of my life, would actually affect my ability to be able to perform in work and in life and in friendships, just because I was tired.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, learning that I had a capacity versus just being able to muscle through, right? And being able to push through and say, oh, like I can do more. It's fine. Like that was really illuminating to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Jen, 13 years working in the school system. When did burnout kind of enter your radar screen? Was this something that you were warned about, or was it something that you had to learn about firsthand?
I hate bringing up the pandemic, but of course, that's kind of when I started noticing some things. As a teacher, we had to figure out new things, new ways to teach. And I don't think we ever got, or at least personally, I don't think I ever got like a break from all that. And then this year, for me, as you said, I'm teaching a couple of middle school classes. So unfortunately, things are being added to our plates, or my plate personally. And for me, I actually had some physical signs that were starting to show for my burnout. I was starting to get my panic attacks. That I am like a stressful person. I've dealt with this my whole life. But I started getting panic attacks again. I actually had ringing in my ears that I've never had before. And I was talking to my therapist, and she was saying that can be a sign of stress. So burnout started to be super real for me this year, to the point where I didn't know if I could like continue my day to day. So it was kind of a scary situation, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
It occurs to me that so much of burnout is tied to, in some ways, ways that we identify ourselves, whether it's as a parent, as a teacher, what our profession is, what our responsibilities are. And then that added pressure of, well, shit, if I'm not performing up to these standards, if I, maybe the standards are unrealistic, or maybe they just haven't been calibrated. Like Jen was saying, the pandemic, if you're not well over 100 years old, this is your first truly global health crisis. Felt on this level where life would be altered, where day-to-day experience would change. I guess to that extent, let's kind of dig in, not just burnout on a philosophical level, but what did burnout look like on a personal level? How was it felt? How did burnout change your own sense of self-perception?
Yeah, I keep going back to like my capacity, but there was this idea of like the kind of person that I wanted to be, the kind of employee, wife, mom, and then like what I was actually capable of. I found myself really not being able to parent the way that I wanted to. I found myself not really being able to be a friend the way that I wanted to. And I think, what Jen was talking about, the pandemic, it made you flex in so many ways. And there was a point where I was like, I just can't flex anymore. Like I cannot adapt to any more like one thing. And it wasn't that the little changes, they add up over time. And so for me, there was this idea of what I understood as acceptable and what I understood as my, the way that I wanted to look, the way that I wanted to perform. And burnout really had to adjust that for me. It was those expectations had to adjust and allow myself to be kinder to myself and say, okay, I'm dealing with a lot right now. Things are going to have to look different because everything is different. So, yeah.
And Jen, how about, your experience, especially as we talk about the profession of teaching, where it's not just believing that you're a good teacher, but there are metrics, there are test scores, there are things that
Right.
the district is looking at to determine how effective you are. What did it look like? What did it feel like to balance a sense of professional identity in the midst of uh, something impossible to measure?
Right. Yeah. Like I go back and forth. Like, is this what I want to be doing? Am I really helping these students if I'm not up to my level where I can actually help them? Because if I'm not at my best, what am I bringing to the table for them? So I was questioning a lot. Like, is this right? Can this be changed? Because right now I'm not helping anyone. They're struggling. We're all struggling, and this, yeah, I really felt like something needed to change or happen.
Mm.
And that's so brutal in this case, because we're both talking about, Sheena, you work with us at To Write Love on Our Arms.
Mhm.
You're a compassionate person. Jen, you've not only taught, but you've given a ton of your time and energy and creativity to this organization as well. You are heart forward people. There's people that experience burnout without that kind of the benefit of having a grounding, heart forward profession. You can burn out doing absolutely anything. Do you feel like maybe there's something more painful to this idea um, of if you are burnout? Jen, you were mentioning, like, am I even good at doing this? Am I good at being a teacher? Am I good at showing up for these students? Could you spend a little more time just talking about the specific pain that comes not just from doing your job well, but knowing that your job means that other people are looking up to you, are counting on you, are seeking some sense of direction and maybe even nurturing from you?
I mean, at times it can feel like a lot of pressure because you have to be on, in a sense, I mean, you can't just come in really how you feel. Some days I'd wake up and be like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like, it's just hard to get out of bed, but you have people waiting for you. You have your students who are trusting that you're going to show up, that you can be their safe space for that day. So you have that sense where you don't want to let them down, even though you feel like you just need some time to, like relax and try to figure out your own things so you can help them better.
And you were also, even today, you still, it's not just your personal burnout, but I'm sure dealing with students that are burnout of how they're needing to learn, and then also dealing with parents who are probably more burnout from parenting than ever before. You're not just balancing your own exhaustion, but also the people that you're trying to teach, and also the frustrated phone calls and emails and check-ins from parents who feel just as overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I was able to write a blog for Taloha, and I kind of went over how much we as teachers do. It's not just about, getting them to learn the content. Honestly, don't I don't tell my admin, but if I don't teach the content, fine. I want them just to be humans. I want them to be good people. So that's kind of been my goal this year. Obviously content, yes, because we have to do the tests and all the things, but the teachers just do so much, and there's a lot on our plate to just make sure that these kids are safe and feel safe.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Jen, kind of what you were talking about, the collateral damage of not being able to operate at capacity, right, is relationships. And that is something that I think is so scary and overwhelming. And I think that's why a profession like teaching, profession like caregiving, a lot of times can lend ourselves to burnout, because the collateral damage is being there for our students. It's being there for our families. When something's got to give, that means that you can't be there for them, and that's really hard um, to prioritize yourself, so that you can be able to pour out to other people. Um, it's interesting. I think that seeing my husband go through the pandemic as a teacher, again, with all the flexibility and all the things, but then also just trying to be there for kids. He had, with all the different crazy rules and everything, he had some students who would show up for 2 days and then have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And then they'd show up for 2 days and have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And just dealing with, the social impact, the burnout of, I have to quarantine, like all this stuff. It was a lot, but then you also want them to be able to do their work, like and you also want to be able to have them feel encouraged. And so I know that for him, he literally would take kids like on Zoom or whatever on his laptop and carry them around the class. Like we were able to teach in class for that, but that was like he'd come home with like a crick in his neck, and it was just so that student could feel encouraged, that student could feel like they were actually still a part of their class even while they were quarantined. As parents, like the things you wouldn't do, you'd go to the ends of the earth, like for your children, and you want them to be able to have the most, um, like insulate them from any harm or any worry or any of the things that you go through. And so you take it on like as yourself. But again, once you burn out, then you can't be there for your kids. You can't be there for the people that you care about. So
Jen, you mentioned your specific emphasis this year on just making sure that these students develop into being good people, quality humans.
Mhm.
And, this is still a lot of pressure for them. What did it look like to not only be in tune with your own sense of burnout, but interacting with students that are probably experiencing burnout for the first time in their lives?
the most stressed out generation, I think the CDC like just released, or someone just released, this is the most stressed out generation of teenagers, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
ever.
And I
Well,
definitely see that for sure in the classroom. And it varies from each personality. It's either, a lack of motivation. It's students who just, when they reach a point, they just literally put their head down, they shut down. Or it's those students who, act out and try to avoid certain situations. But yeah, I know they're struggling. I can see it. And sometimes in my classroom, we have conversations if things are getting too heavy as far as like their schedules. I know my district is small, so we have a lot of students who are involved in sports and this like acting or like all the things. They're involved in all the things, so it gets overwhelming for them. So maybe some days if they need it, I give them a day to catch up on. Yeah, some of them are in like college, catch up on college work or catch up on another class. Just I don't feel like I'm going to do them any service if I make them rush into my work or overwhelm them. I'm more for quality over quantity.
Mm.
And they respond really well to that. It's a mature conversation. It's not them thinking they're getting a free day. It's something they actually need.
Have any of your students invoked the term burnout in trying to describe what they've been feeling?
I don't think they've ever used the actual term burnout. It's more, I'm so stressed. I don't want to be here. I don't know what to do. I don't know if they have the actual vocab or verbiage to explain what they are feeling right now. And rightfully so. It's kind of new for them. And we don't probably talk about it enough, unfortunately. So
I think you do an amazing job of kind of leading the way and teaching them ways to cope with that. And I think that comes with, processing our own burnout, processing ways that we can get through. Like if we're able to address it, if we're able to heal in ourselves, then we can show others how to do that. So you have a really cool activity that you did on Mondays that I think is so fun.
Yeah,
yeah,
let's go into that.
I do what we call mindful Mondays. So every Monday, it's as much for me as it is for them, honestly. We take about 2 minutes and we brain dump. We just write anything that's come to our mind. And then we will practice either some sort of breathing technique, or we might do some stretching. One week I did coloring, and that was actually a big hit. Like to see high schoolers like really enjoying and relaxing and coloring was like it touched my heart. It was awesome. So yeah, every Monday we take time and we just do something for us.